When it comes to digital printing, amateur artists and professional designers alike can always learn something new. That's where we come in, with today's episode of School of Print. First, we're going to familiarize you with one of the most standard elements of digital printing, crop marks, also known as trim marks. Also known as those little lines that show up at the corners of just about any project and show the printer where to trim the paper. Any project that needs to be cut down to size is going to need crop marks. Luckily, they're incredibly easy to add to your project. But before we get into showing you how to add them to your project, let's talk about crop's sister function, bleed. It's a pretty weird word, I'll admit, but the simple answer is, bleed refers to excess color or image that trims off to create a seamless full-color graphic from edge to edge. So the image is bleeding off the edge of the design. This gives the cutter wiggle room, especially on a two-sided piece. While printing and running through the various stages of bindery, paper can shift and move, creating minor inconsistencies which the bleed disguises, preventing unprinted edges from showing up in the finished product. Assume your standard bleed is going to be 0.25 inches. That means 0.125 inches on each side. That doesn't sound like a lot, but it will help to make your project look exactly like you envisioned. For example, say you're making a thank you card that is going in an A2 envelope. The card size for an A2 is 4.25 by 5.5. The card will need a total of 0.25 inches added for bleed, making the actual file 5.75 by 4.5. Now you can make that card in any vector-based program, as long as you keep the text and important images at least 0.25 inches away from the edge. By sizing your image to these specifications, your image will be exactly how your printer will need it to be for trimming. Which is why it's so important to make sure your finished file is already saved with crop marks before sending it to your printer. If you don't have a program that can do it for you, talk to your printer. It's possible they'll be able to add the marks on their end. However, there's not much they can do about missing bleed. Now that you understand how bleed works when you're dealing with a card or poster, it's time to take it one step further. How do you handle bleed when it comes to brochures, or books, or even custom-shaped stickers? Don't worry, we have answers for all of the varieties of projects you can think of. For your brochure, only think about the edges that are cutting, not the folding ones. Now it's just like the flat card, a single sheet of paper with folds. You just have to add bleed to the edge of that sheet. For a book, it's the same thing. You don't have to worry about the gutter, unless you haven't accounted for it at all. Only the pages with color or graphics that are meant to touch the edge matter in this case. Make sure that content hits at least 0.125 out from the trim size. For shapes like circles or even funky shapes cut to, say, a brand logo, all we need is a digital die line at the size you need, separate from the art. And for the art to extend again, 0.125 inches out from the die. It isn't simple in theory, but it is in practice. Think about it like smearing the art past where you need it. So, the theory checks out. Let's look at how to add crop and bleed in a few different programs. Let's start with the easy ones, Illustrator and InDesign. Both programs allow you to set up bleed when you create a new document. Just add 0.125 in the first box, tab over, and it'll autofill the rest. Now comes the hard part, making sure every image hits the red bleed line and not just creating your document around the white pasteboard. Just because you set up bleed does not mean it will add the art for you. Thinking like that can cost you an afternoon of tweaking and editing page edges. You'll curse bleed, but do not hate bleed. From here, you need to go to Save As if you're working in Illustrator, or Export PDF in InDesign. And choose Single Pages. In the Marks and Bleed tab to the side of both programs, choose Marks and Bleeds. Under All Printers Marks, choose Only Crop Marks. You thought we forgot about them, didn't you? And if you set up your bleed box already, check Use Document Bleed Settings, which should already be set at 0.125 inches all around. If not, type it in manually, but only if the art is 100% off of that white artboard. Other programs are trickier, since Photoshop, Procreate, Clip Studio, and other raster-based art programs are manual. Our best advice when it comes to these programs is to make your theoretical thank you card 5.75 by 4.5 and drag guides to show you where the true size is to make sure that no text gets too close. Worst case scenario, you might have to guesstimate. It isn't ideal, but with some practice, and by maybe overcompensating your text placement a little, no one will be the wiser. Remembering these tricks will help you make sure your print project can go through the print shop with little to no worry. And if you have any questions, the staff here at WonderPress are always happy to help our School of Print students.